Hey, welcome to Crafty Music Tips. My name's Crafty, and in this video we're going to talk about everything involved with how you become a session musician. Okay, so before we talk about the how, we got to figure out the what. What is a session musician? Well, a session musician is basically someone on either an instrument or as a vocalist that gets hired in order to do a recording session or even as a part of a live performance. Now we're going to dig even further into what actually makes a session musician. We're going to talk about the musical attributes and the personal attributes. So let's start with the musical ones. Now the first obvious musical attribute on the list is your skill set. It's the level of your playability or your singability that you have. Now the next is a music theory / reading knowledge. It's a pretty common thing for a session musician to be just given a chart and they have to be able to read it and play it straight away. Also, another attribute is that a session musician will have a really good ear. So if they're playing or singing, then you'd be able to just fit in to whatever's happening by using your ear. And that also means you'd know if something doesn't quite sound right and you can fix it.
Something is not right.
A session musician also is a fast learner. They need to be able to pick up stuff really fast because time is money. It's also important for a session musician to have a number of different genres that they have knowledge of but can also execute and perform. There is definitely no limit to the amount of different types of genres that a session musician could get asked to be hired for. Now I'm sure there's other things that I could add in this list, but I'm just putting just the most main important ones here. And so the last on the musical attributes is having good equipment, having reliable equipment, having something that's gonna sound really good. Also having a number of different types of equipment, different models, different brands, being able to have a larger array of sounds at your disposal. Alright, so now it's time to delve into some personal attributes. So, first on this list for a session musician is to be able to be creative as well as take instruction. So, a session musician may be asked sometimes like, oh, can you just make up something in this section? Or it'll be, you have to play it exactly like this. Replicate it now, go. Also, another personal attribute is you've got to be adaptable and flexible as a session musician. So a session may start out in one particular way and then just take a drastic change, and you've got to be able to adapt to the ongoing changes. Just flow like flowing water.
Be water, my friend.
Here's a really important attribute. You've got to be really organized and professional as a session musician. It's really important, if you're rocking up late and you're unprepared and parts of your equipment doesn't work, well, I don't know if you're going to get called back. And so the way that you interact with other musicians, you got to have tact, you got to be, endearing, you got to be able to be, someone that people think like that person's professional. Another attribute is that a session musician needs to work hard and fast. If you're just only thinking of just quickly working fast, but you're not willing to put in some really hard yards, it might be a really long session. It might require an extra session. So yeah, being known as somebody that doesn't really want to put in the hard yards is not going to get you the gig. So be really prepared to work hard as a session musician.
I work hard for the money, so hard for the money.
Here's a really important personal attribute. Got to have communication skills. There's nothing worse than somebody not really knowing where they stand with you. In a session, it's just so important to make sure that if there's something that you're unsure about or unhappy about, that you can communicate that. But also do it in an appropriate way, which is not something that's threatening to anybody else in the situation. You just got to make sure that you've got your feelings heard, and that if you get a direction that is something that you're not able to do, don't try and fluff your way through it because you're just wasting their time. So have good communication skills. Now here's some really good wordplay. A personal attribute for being a session musician is to be personable. What does that mean, personable? Well, let's just say that there's a really long session that you have to do, yet there's somebody else that maybe isn't as highly skilled as you, maybe you're more organized, but if you're just somebody that they don't really want to hang out with for a really long session, well then the other person will get the gig. So being someone that just as a person is being someone that's just a pleasure to be around. Now, I could have come up with a much larger list here, but just sticking to the important ones. The personal attributes of a session musician must involve being willing to drive. There are a number of sessions that may be not very close to where you live, whether it's a live performance or a recording session. And if you're willing to drive, willing to get the kilometers up, well, you'll get the gig.
Are we there yet?
No.
Are we there yet?
No.
Are we there yet?
All right, so there we go. So there's a number of different attributes that a session musician has. Now, what about for you? How is it that you can become a session musician if you are not one already? Well, if there was anything that I just mentioned in the above musical and personal attributes list that you feel that you can develop even more, well then that's a pretty good start. And I'll just give you a little bit of a tip if you're wondering exactly how you should be developing your musical skills to become a session musician. There's two ways that you can go about it. You can try the first way, which is just becoming an expert in one particular area, one particular instrument or vocals. That could be in a genre or just in your general ability. And the second way is that you just develop all of your skills if you play a number of different instruments and sing and like a bunch of different genres, that you try and just have so many on offer. Because, for instance, if you're pretty good at 3 different genres, then that's quite attractive to somebody that's got a recording session or a live performance where they're going to be performing those 3 different genres, because otherwise they'd be having to ring up 3 different people. So making a decision on becoming an expert at one or becoming pretty good at lots of things is going to help you with knowing what is it that I should be developing with my musical skills. All right, so then you get to the point where you feel like, hey, I'm getting pretty good. Where's the calls for session work? The next step is you got to advertise and sell yourself. People aren't going to know to give you a call or an email or a DM, whatever it is, to be able to inquire in hiring your session services if they don't know about you. Now, it's all well and good for people just to say, hey, sell yourself and advertise, but unless you know exactly how, might be a bit confused and then a bit on the back foot for doing it. So here is 3 ways that I'll suggest that you do that for yourself. So the first one is to network yourself. What does that mean, network? It means that it is going up to other musicians, going up to people that are doing recording or live performing that need session musicians, and just really nicely going up to introduce yourself, just to let them know that you exist. Not in a way that it is, hey, you need me, so just stop having the other people that you've been hiring and have me instead. You don't want to give off that vibe of being a bit of a wanker. No, you just want to really ever so lightly just make them aware that you exist, and then, hey, if you ever need someone, well then, give me a call. And when you're doing that, you'll seem a lot more professional, a lot more someone that is approachable, that they would be interested in if you had a business card, a website, also like a portfolio with some other stuff that you've already done. Also, the other one is just suss out who are the other people in your local industry that are doing session type work, and just hit them up. You know, really nicely, maybe buy them a drink and ask them how they started out and what it is that they do. And, you know, if you become mates and they're busy where they can't do a session, well, who's going to get the call up instead? I know that for me, I don't feel threatened for other people who've got the same skill set in my local industry, because I just find that they're really handy, that if I'm busy doing something else and I get called up for a gig, well then I'll just get them the gig. Alright, so when I was putting together the content for this video, I thought to myself, well, it's probably a good idea that I talk about some really current stuff. So I'm shooting this in the year 2021, and here's some things that I've noticed about the current industry in the way of session musicians. Okay, so the modern session musician would be much better off in having a home studio setup. Now, why is that? Well, a lot of the time technology can replace a session musician in a lot of ways, but also there's a lot less budget than what there used to be. So if you have a home studio recording setup, well then, if somebody needs your services but isn't willing to pay for you to go to wherever it is, in a recording studio situation, but you can just supply them with an audio file, well then that's a lot more attractive to them. So the better the quality of the recording equipment you have, the better. Also knowledge of how to run a home studio. And depending on what it is that you're recording, the better room acoustics that you have to recording, the better as well. Now, knowledge of how to do file sharing, so sites like Dropbox or WeTransfer or Google Drive, knowledge of how to transfer your audio files is going to really help you. Maybe the client would like to get on a video call with you to be able to see your setup, to be able to kind of talk you through how they would like things mic'd up and like that. So if you know about video calls, that's great. And also having the capabilities to capture yourself doing your recording on video is going to be quite attractive potentially to the person that would be hiring you for the session, because then, as long as you're okay with it, then they would use that footage and then put it together with the other session musicians that they've had involved and promote it on social media, put it a part of a video, that type of thing.
Every time we say goodbye, I die a little.
Now, speaking of those video capturing capabilities, I myself had just been recently hired as a session musician, so I'm actually going to put together a video where I show you what I did for that. So stay tuned for that video. Just before I go, let me know in the comments below, what did you think of this list? Did I leave out anything? Is there something that you need to work on yourself? Let me know if there's another subject that I could go through in a YouTube video that would really help you out on your journey. Now, Crafty Music Tips is on YouTube, obviously, but it's also available on a bunch of different social platforms, so follow Crafty Music Tips there. And if that's still not enough, I've got something to offer you. It's a free download. It's an ebook called Actually, How Good Are You? It's really relevant to this video because, you know, you might be feeling like, look, I'd love to do some session work, but I'm just really unsure of where I fit into the industry. And so being able to figure that out isn't quite so easy. What I've done is I've given you the step-by-step process to figure out where it is that you're at now and where you'd like to be, and also where do you fit in this weird food chain of a music industry that we find ourselves in. So I hope that's helpful for you. The link's below. Go click it and check it out. There we go. That's it for this video. My name's Crafty. I'll see you in another music tips video really soon. Take care. Rock on.